It's Monday, March 8th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. The proposed $8.50 minimum wage is just a starting point in the eyes of the Barbados Workers Union. General Secretary Tony Moore stated the position as she frankly discussed the issue on BT's Pulse last evening. Cabinet is expected to make a final decision on the issue on April 1st, but Moore made it clear that while $8.50 is an improvement, it is simply not enough given the cost of living and will have to be addressed going forward.
The Barbados Workers Union's view has been, and it continues up to this time, that because a wage might be uncomfortable for employers, we have to look at that wage in the context not of what it does to the employer only, but what it is intended to do to the worker. And for me, it is untenable and it is almost unimaginable that companies would be ready to admit that their means of survival resides only within their capacity to suppress the wages of workers at this point to $6.25 in the name of COVID. And I would challenge those employers, and I would challenge anybody who's minded to take that view to go to a supermarket and try to spend $260 a week for a family of four. And one of the things that, and four is not an average, because I know in a canvass very recently across the constituency that four people isn't a normal family in Barbados. Isn't the average family in Barbados. You're looking more at seven. And I would want to challenge people to try to figure out how you would spend $260 in a supermarket to feed 5 to 7 people. Furthermore, having to look at things like utilities and rent and so on. I've always maintained, and I've said it before on this issue, it is never the wrong time to do the right thing. I believe businesses have to figure out themselves and have to figure out how we are not going to stick up at $8.50 because the Barbados Workers Union isn't going to be about that, but how we can see how we can start there and over the course of several years get the minimum wage to something that will be more livable.
Executive Director of the Barbados Employers Confederation, Sheena Mayers Granville, says while the business community is of the view that the current minimum wage is low, there are concerns about the timing of the increase.
Businesses operate in the same environment within which we live. So there are some out there who are struggling for survival. The concern has been that some won't make it. And therefore, having the increase at this time was a concern. But as I said from the outset, there was the almost universal response that the minimum wage needed to be reviewed. The view of the business community has been that the last increase was, when was it? 2012, Tony? 2011, 2012. There was the last increase to the minimum wage. It has been too long. When you take 9 to 10 years to look at a minimum wage, you've created now a significant lag. If we had an approach that allowed for gradual increases, that is a preferred approach. But when you're looking at a 9-year period and then a situation that is unprecedented, unique, that has extreme economic pressure, businesses are going to be hard pressed.
Labour Minister Colin Jordan was also a guest on the Barbados Today program, and he acknowledged that the proposed increase was a first step.
At this point, that 625 to the proposed 850 does not cover everybody. That said, the positives coming out of the increase in the minimum wage speak first to allowing those who are affected by it, and I'm referring specifically to workers, it allows them to be able to either breathe a little more easily or breathe a little less, with a little less difficulty. Because as Tony said earlier, 850 will not take the pressure off of everybody. It definitely will not. And we understand that. But we've always said that a government has to balance competing interests. That is what a government has to do. And we want, as a first step, to allow people to breathe a little easier or with some less difficulty.
As Barbados joins the rest of the world in observing International Women's Day, there's a view that the pandemic recovery is the chance to leave behind generations of exclusion and inequalities. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres made the comment in a message to commemorate the day, which is being held under the theme Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. He said the time is now to build an equal future for all.
In a male-dominated world, with a male-dominated culture, gender equality is essentially a question of power, and males are an essential part of the solution. I call on countries, companies and institutions to adopt special measures and quotas to advance women's equal participation and achieve rapid change. As we recover from the pandemic, support and stimulus packages must target women and girls specifically, including through investments in women-owned businesses and the care economy. Pandemic recovery is our chance to leave behind generations of exclusion and inequalities. Whether running a country, a business or a popular movement, women are making contributions that are delivering for all and driving progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. It's time to build an equal future. This is a job for everyone.
Confirmed COVID-19 cases in Barbados now stand at 3,285. The updated figure is as a result of 21 new positive cases, which were recorded on Saturday, even as 61 people recovered and were released from isolation. Of the 21 positive persons, they comprise of 10 women and 11 men. There are now 433 active cases of the virus on island. The country has recorded 37 COVID-19 related deaths. Also on Saturday, 393 persons were vaccinated as part of the National Vaccination Program for COVID-19. To date, 48,886 Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines have been administered, comprising of 20,549 men and 28,337 women.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, a donation from the India government of 20,000 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine to the Bahamas has been delayed. The vaccines were originally scheduled to arrive on Sunday, but are now expected on Wednesday, causing government to tweak the rollout of its vaccination program somewhat. Prime Minister Hubert Minnis gave the update in this Our News report.
The rollout of the first 20,000 doses is expected to begin days after the arrival of the vaccine. Because we are receiving the vaccine doses in smaller batches, we will deviate from the original plan slightly. Those eligible to receive these first doses will be healthcare workers in the public and private sectors, residents and staff of elder care homes and non-ambulatory residents registered in the public health system.
Minister also revealed that an additional 33,600 vaccines will arrive by the end of March. These vaccines are part of the 100,000 vaccines that government has made a down payment on. The other 64,000 doses will come in May, according to the Prime Minister.
And finally, President Joe Biden's relief bill aimed at helping Americans deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has cleared a major hurdle. The plan was approved in the Senate on Saturday, despite every Republican senator voting against it. More from Reuters TV.
The Senate on Saturday passed President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief plan in a party line vote. After an all-night session that saw Democrats battling amongst themselves over jobless aid and the Republican minority failing in attempts to push through some 36 amendments, 50 Democrats voted for the American Rescue Plan. Not a single Republican did. In what would be one of the largest stimulus packages in U.S. history, the final bill includes $400 billion in one-time payments of $1,400 to most Americans, $300 a week in extended jobless benefits, and $350 billion in aid to state and local governments that have seen the pandemic blow a huge hole in their budget.
I promised the American people that help was on the way.
President Biden on Saturday hailed the bill's passage and promised it would supercharge the end of the pandemic.
This nation has suffered too much for much too long. And everything in this package is designed to relieve the suffering and to meet the most urgent needs of the nation and put us in a better position to prevail.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.